Hey everyone, it's Megan coming to you live, not so live, from my parents' kitchen because it is so much nicer than mine. Today we are going to be making homemade bread in a Dutch oven. So go ahead and stick with me and I'll be showing you what we're going to need. So obviously you're going to need some flour, some sugar, a nice deep Dutch oven pan. I'm using one that is ceramic lined. You're also going to need some parchment paper to go in that. In addition, you're also going to need some nice kosher salt. You can use regular salt, but I find that kosher tastes a lot better. You're also going to need a 1 1/4 cups of warm water. You're also going to need 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast, not the instant yeast, the active dry. And you don't have to, but today I'm going to be using a stand mixer. You can use a bowl or a spoon if you like instead, but I'm going to be taking the lazy way out and using my stand mixer here. Also, don't forget your measuring cups and your measuring spoons. And as I stated before, we have some nice fresh rosemary here, which I am going to use, but you don't have to. If you're playing at home, you can get fresh if you like. You don't have to include it at all, or you can use dry. So let's get started.
All right, and starting off, you're going to have your 2 1/4 teaspoon of active dry yeast. Next, you're going to be putting in your 1 teaspoon of sugar. And your 1 1/4 cup of warm water. You're going to let that rest for 5 minutes. Give it a nice stir first. Not too much though, because you don't want to damage the yeast. So you're going to let that sit for 5 minutes. After your 5 minutes have passed, go ahead and add your 1 1/2 teaspoons of kosher salt. And your 2 1/2 cups of flour. Make sure you get it all in there. And like I said before, you can use a bowl if you want, or if you're using a stand mixer, just put it on its lowest setting. You just want to give it a very nice stir. You'll notice that some of the flour is up on the sides. You just want to turn off your machine and go ahead and get those down into the main part of the bowl where they will be mixed. Okay, so you'll notice it was at this point that I realized that the dough was a little too dry, so I add just a little dab of water into the bowl because you want this dough to be it's going to be pretty sticky. So you'll see I added just a little bit of water. I think I added 2 tablespoons at the time, and that makes the dough a lot better. It's supposed to be about that level of stickiness. Then you want to lift the top off We're going to go ahead and scrape the dough off of the hook. You can see it kind of sticks to my fingers. If you're going to do this, I recommend putting your hand under a little bit of cold water first, and it'll keep that from happening. I also recommend taking off your dough hook. For some reason I couldn't get mine off at the time. So go ahead and at this point, it would be a lot easier if you took the dough hook off, but if you can't do it, you just can't do it sometimes. We're gonna go ahead and sprinkle some flour over the top. You want to make sure that all sides, the purpose of this is to make sure that all sides of the dough are covered in flour so that it sticks a little bit less. So you'll see that here I turn the dough over and it's still really sticky, so we want to put just a little bit more flour over the top of that. And one more sprinkle of the flour. And add your fresh rosemary. I ground my fresh rosemary up in a small little blender, and then make sure you mix it in real good, but try not to knead the bread. You just want it lightly mixed in so you don't overwork the bread. After that, remove it from your stand mixer if you're using one, and go ahead and cover it with a towel cover it with a tea towel and let it rise on the counter for about an hour or until the dough has doubled in size. After that, lightly flour your counter, or if you want a large cutting board, here I just used the counter. After that, you're going to tip the dough out of the bowl, and make sure that when you do this, you are careful about it and you do not punch down the dough. We're not punching the dough in this case because we don't have to work it very much. You want to keep the nice air bubbles in there so that you have an airy and delicious loaf of bread. Make sure you adjust your camera properly. Alright, now you're going to start pulling each bit of dough toward the center, each corner, so to speak. Kind of like you're folding an envelope, and you're going to repeat this process until the dough starts to feel tight and resists your folds a little bit. After that, you're going to go ahead and try to add a little bit more flour. Make sure that it's nice and round. After that, go ahead and get another bowl and go ahead and put some flour in that as well. After that, you're going to lift up the dough and you are going to put it seam side down into the bowl. Seam side down, very important. Cover it with a tea towel and let it rest another 30 minutes while you preheat the oven. Go ahead and set your oven to 460 degrees Fahrenheit, and while it's preheating, you're going to go ahead and open your oven and put your Dutch oven right in there and let it heat up as the oven heats up. When your dough is finally finished, go ahead and take it out of the bowl and just tip it right over onto a piece of parchment paper. When you do this, you'll notice that there's the crack right up in the top of the dough. That is what you want. That is the seam, and that will allow air to escape so your loaf doesn't explode. Go ahead and take your Dutch oven out, take the lid off, put in the dough, put your lid back on, and you're going to put it into the oven for 30 minutes, still at 460 degrees. When that's over, go ahead and take the lid off. You'll notice it's looking pretty golden brown. Put it back in for another 10 minutes with the lid off. When you're finished, you have a beautiful crusty piece of bread. Go ahead and take it out with the parchment paper very carefully, put it on your cooling rack, and you are all done. Thanks for watching.